We shall now begin the first session of the conference on the theme Party and the PLA under Xi Jinping, which would be followed by a question and answer session moderated by the chair. The chair for the first session would be Commodore V. Venugopal, distinguished member, Chennai Center for China Studies. Commodore Venugopal was commissioned into the Indian Navy in 1979. He is an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, Defense Services Staff College, Wellington, College of Naval Warfare, Mumbai, and Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Honolulu. He is a specialist in anti-submarine warfare and has served afloat and ashore in various appointments during his service spanning 30 years. We also have a stellar lineup of speakers for this session, namely Mr. Jayadev Ranade, President, Center for China Analysis and Strategy, Major General Rajiv Narayanan, AVSM VSM, former Additional Director General of Military Operations, Army Headquarters, and Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Director General Artillery. Now, I would like to invite Commodore Venugopal to deliver the chair's remarks and introduce the paper presenters. Please, sir.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to session 1. So we have 3 eminent, well-known and knowledgeable speakers in this session. I will go in the sequence that they're coming into. Mr. Jayadev Ranade, we all know him, a member of the National Security Advisory Board and president of the recently established Center for China Analysis and Strategy. Former Additional Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat, Government of India, member of the Core Group on China of the Indian Council of World Affairs, and distinguished fellow at the Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies. He's a security and intelligence expert and a seasoned China analyst with almost 30 years experience in the field. That we have already got the taste of it, and we're looking for more of it. His foreign assignments have included Hong Kong, Beijing, and his last foreign posting prior to retirement was a minister in the Indian Embassy in Washington. The next speaker we have Major General Rajiv Narayanan, AVSM VSM, commissioned in 1978 in the Pune Horse, one of the oldest regiments of Indian Army. The general retired after over 37 years of distinguished service. As the last posting was ADGMO, which is Additional Director General Military Operations in Army Headquarters. An alumni of DSSC Wellington and DSSC SC Mirpur, Dhaka. This is another staff college which the brightest of the bright normally go into. Is an avid follower of international relations and geopolitics for over 3 decades. He served as the defense attaché in the Embassy of India, Tajikistan. He is currently a professor of practice with IIT Madras and a member of the Chennai Center for China Studies and a member of the Indus International Research Foundation. Most importantly, he is also my course mate from the National Defense Academy. Next, we all know General Shankar. Retired as Director General of Artillery in October 2016. Lieutenant General Shankar has vast experience and has held many important command, staff, and instructional appointments in the Army. An alumni of National Defense Services Staff College, Army War College, and Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey Bay, and National Defense College. He has a deep understanding and experience of successful defense planning and acquisition spanning over a decade. He is presently a professor in the Aerospace Department of IIT Madras and leads the Tamil Nadu Defense Industrial Corridor. The general writes extensively. I need not say anything more. We all read his articles on a daily basis. And he's a leading, and he's a strategic, geopolitical, and military expert that we have amongst us, and we are fortunate to have that. I will now close my introduction, and may I request Mr. Ranade sir to please take the podium.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, once again. It's not my decision to impose myself on you yet again, but that's something you have to take up with the management, I think. But we are discussing something which is, I think, endemic to China and many other countries, but particularly China, which is factionism in the Chinese Communist Party. Inter-party dynamics, it has been called. I touched upon it a little bit earlier, but factions, groups are endemic to the Chinese Communist Party and to China. And it stems from the history that it has, which it has not been able to get rid of till today. The first person who tried to change it was Deng Xiaoping. Since then, in varying degrees, they've tried to push it. But essentially, what I'm referring to are the various provinces which have become, shall I say, the bastions of individual leaders. It comes from the old warlords who ran certain empires. Many of them were military men. In fact, all of them were military men. So they appointed their favorites and juniors as the number 2, number 3, and that's how the hierarchy developed. In the Chinese Communist Party too, the party secretary is all powerful. And for a long time, he appointed, everyone under him in the party. They were all his people. Then that began changing. Deng Xiaoping began moving them around, began moving the military region commanders around. But their deputies or, deputies were basically the people who stayed behind and stayed there for many, many years. So that does remain. And when Xi Jinping was appointed in 2012, as I said, his tasks were party discipline, adherence to party ideology, etc. But along with that came the mandate to cleanse the party, to ensure that the cadres abide by party discipline, which means listen to the party center's directives that come down, adhere to party ideology, because there was laxity that successive leaders had seen and felt, and eliminate factions and groupings because they could pose a challenge to the party center. That is what Po Xilai did. He posed a challenge. Po Xilai harbored this desire to become the leader, to become the chairman, or shall I say, of the military commission and the general secretary of the party. He felt he had the right pedigree. He was the son of one of the 8 immortals, one of the revolutionary founders, and his father had not been sullied by being purged like Xi Jinping's. So, and he was older than Xi Jinping, so he felt that, he was senior. And he made a bid. But before that, he had developed factions within the PLA, particularly the army that operated out of central China and Tibet. The 2 armies there, he had his people. They organized functions, etc., where he was, shall I say, the chief guest. He organized groups within the Public Security Bureau in order to bolster his strength and to keep himself informed of what's happening in Beijing, and when necessary to make a move. This was a faction that really challenged the party center. And that's what Hu Jintao said, that Po Xilai has posed a challenge to the party center and therefore he has to go. Now, that means you actually shaken the very apex of the party. And that was the strength that the faction had developed. He was, of course, out. He's in jail for life. But when Xi Jinping came, as I said, he had been given that mandate. He resorted to an instrument that all Chinese Communist Party leaders did, which is a campaign against corruption. But he did it with a slight difference. He put one of his probably closest friends, Wang Qishan, as the chairman of the Central Discipline Inspection Commission, which was the party's anti-corruption arm. It was there and did what many anti-corruption outfits do, a desultory raid here, a desultory raid there, that kind of thing. But he gave it teeth. And they began really moving into the, against the party cadres and in the government. He also, by March of the following year, brought the PLA within the ambit of the Central Discipline Inspection Commission, something which had never happened. And he unleashed, that's the word I'd use, the CDIC against the PLA. So, within a period of 3 years, there were over 145 major generals in the PLA who had been dismissed on charges of corruption. Now, in China, a PLA officer being dismissed means he gets nothing. No pension, no gratuity, no financial, nothing. And he's dispossessed of whatever he may have. That's why some of them committed suicide before they were convicted, so that the charges remained unproven and the family would still benefit. But a total, before the 19th Party Congress, a total of over 40,000 officers of the PLA had been charged and dismissed. So you can imagine, over 1/3 of the officer corps. And that obviously shook the PLA. But I think one of his agenda points was to push through the reform, restructuring and reorganization of the PLA, which was being resisted. So he visited, of course, 800 units across the country, he went to various groups, but there was also this, to ensure that the policy was received. And it did. He also unleashed the CDIC against the government apparatus. And over 173 vice ministers in the government. Now, a vice minister is equivalent to a full secretary to the government of India. Over 173 were charged with corruption and dismissed. And in addition to, of course, many officials lower down the ladder. They are called the tigers whom he targeted, and he continues to target. And in the party, there were over a few million who were punished. So, he really made this, he gave teeth to the CDIC, used it very effectively, and mounted the most far-reaching, thorough, and extensive anti-corruption campaign that China has ever seen, and it continues till today. So, this was one way by which he began eliminating opposition. Anyone who he thought was disloyal, or could be disloyal, or was on another side, was targeted. It was an effective way of doing it, which happened. But it's not that easy. As I said, factionism is endemic in the Chinese Communist Party. And regardless of what people may say, for a cadre in the party to advance, he subscribes to and also contributes, I suppose, to what is called a patron-client or a patron-cadre relationship. So he selects a patron, a person who he thinks has the potential and the authority to rise and go higher, and he latches onto him. And the patron, in turn, nurtures him and keeps moving him upwards, because he's a reliable guy, so he can trust him. Today, of course, when we look at it, we see that Xi Jinping has picked up people who were with him from his early days in the provinces. He's brought them in. We did a study on the Politburo, and they're all people of that type. Of course, another thing came through, that despite the rules that by 65 you're not eligible to go for higher office, Xi Jinping didn't bother. He said, he's my guy, he'll come in. And that's what he's done. Age is no longer a criteria. The kind of qualifications that were laid down earlier is no longer a criteria. It's basically loyalty is the main thing, which is what he has done. He brought people in. So what I'm trying to say is that getting rid of factionalism is not going to be easy. The second thing that one notices is the persistence of factionalism. I did talk about Po Xilai in the first lecture and now. And Po Xilai continues to be. He's under house imprisonment. His wife is facing a suspended death sentence and all that, whatever. But Po Xilai still has followers. I mean, I've met people, cadres, who when they thought no one else was listening, I was sitting at the seat behind them and I heard them talking. They were talking in very appreciative terms about Po Xilai. And in fact, if you go through WikiLeaks, you'll find US Embassy cable reporting on Po Xilai to the State Department and saying what an outstanding cadre he is. He's got a very sharp mind. He remembers details. He was Commerce Minister at that time. And in Chongqing, he did the same thing. He was dynamic. He revived Chongqing's economy. And of course, he catered to the gallery. He began playing what are called the red songs. He began commissioning red movies, which are red meaning communist movies, etc., in order to bolster his image. But these people were saying that we need a dynamic leader like him who knows what the economy can do and what it can bring about. And this is years after he was sentenced and punished and banished. His word cannot be mentioned, his name cannot be taken in Beijing, but here in the provinces, he still has a following. And off and on, in the Chinese official media, we still find references that so-and-so has been charged with whatever crime. And there in the third or fourth line of the charge, by which time, you get bored, you stop reading it. After the second line, it's mentioned, and he worked with Po Xilai and so-and-so. The message is very clear, that if you are linked with him, you're tainted. And that is the kind of thing that is going on. So that's one faction that still exists. In fact, I recall in January this year, Shi Ping, he was the director of the state grain administration. It doesn't seem to be a very important post, but there's a lot of money there. Grain and agriculture are big things. He was punished. Out of the blue, we never heard anything earlier. And there it mentioned that he worked with Po Xilai for so many years. And that was one of the main charges. So what I'm trying to say is that while we may not have definitive proof that there is a Po Xilai faction, but we are seeing that the party still continues to hunt out people like that, meaning that there is a faction, there is a group which exists and which they're targeting. The second I would point to is within the PLA. Despite, I would say, the massive purges that have happened, you would have all read about the two top guys of the rocket force who just been removed for various reasons. Despite all that, till today, we find references to people who were removed in 2015-16. That is Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, General Su Tsai Ho, and General Ko Po Shing. Both senior people, both close to Jiang Zemin, and both accused of selling ranks to the PLA officers. In other words, there were a lot of PLA officers who naturally were keen on getting promotions. They paid certain amounts to these gentlemen and they got their ranks. And therefore at a certain period, and this Xi Jinping himself said, between this year and this year, so many people, received very rapid promotions to the rank of generals. That slowed down. But he did make it a point of rewarding those who didn't benefit from that, who refused to pay. That nexus. But General Su Tsai Ho and Ko Po Shing, they continue to be mentioned till today. And the military newspapers and the party newspapers keep talking about eradicating their evil influence in the PLA, eradicating the cliques that have formed around them in the PLA, which means they still exist. There's still that cleansing which is going on. We also find this in the Politburo and in the Central Committee. Before the 19th Party Congress, in fact, just a fortnight before, one of the Politburo members, everyone thought he was a bright rising star, he's going to make it into the Politburo Standing Committee, Sun Sang-kai. Suddenly, he was removed and there was a news report saying that he's under investigation, which means, of course, he's being charged, a Politburo member. And one of the charges was that he had not done enough to stamp out the Po Xilai influence in Chongqing. So that worry still continues. Sun Sang-kai is gone. Many cadres would have owed a lot to him. They're still around somewhere, obviously lying very, very low. but they're there. The other, and here I come to the, as I said, the crown jewels of the party, which is the public security apparatus. There was a vice minister called Sun Lichun, very powerful. He was in charge of some of the key departments in the public security ministry. He was charged and he was investigated and sentenced. And then they began looking into the public security ministry. Now, as I said, that is the crown jewels, that is the key. In any communist or authoritarian system, the public security department is the key department. That's the one responsible for internal security. And for Xi Jinping, he had done some cleansing after the Poshilai incident, when 3,000 cadres were sent for re-education, what is called re-education, punishment, for their involvement. But obviously there were many more, but he had not been able to get round to it. Now he got the chance. Sun Sankai was removed, and the head of the Guangdong province public security, which is in fact, which receives the largest amount of funds for public security, because they were always worried about color revolutions seeping in from Hong Kong. Li Chungshang, okay, sir, he was removed and accused of proximity to Sun Sankai. So all this was happening. The threat to Xi Jinping, in addition to all this, has become more potent over the last year, I would say, with the decline in the economy, with the mounting unemployment, with the 21.3% actually is a very potent, has the potential for a lot of damage, because they are graduate unemployment, which means the one-child family graduates who come out, they're the ones who are not getting employed. And their complaint is that we have studied so hard, we've got this qualification, and we're not getting a commensurate job. Initially, the party used to say, but we've given you a job, what's the complaint? So they said, yes, you've given us a job as a manual laborer, we are qualified as scientists or whatever. So that was one thing. Two phenomena happened. One, there was a social phenomenon called Thangping, which is lie flat. They lost hope. They said, why should I work? Why should I study? I'll sit at home, my sister will feed me or my mother will feed me, I'll lie on the couch, I'm not going to do anything. The party got worried because they said, if this happens, when as it is we have a one-child family, productivity is really going to sink. So they began telling the state-owned enterprises and others, please employ these people. They began having job fairs, etc., but the situation hasn't improved. But that's another potential area of threat. That's contributing to feeding anger against Xi Jinping and enabling these cliques which are functioning in various ministries and departments to gain in strength. Since we are out of time, the last and the most potent force, and I'll touch on two, is that of Jiang Zemin's supporters, the former president, who was very powerful, Shanghai clique. Xi Jinping had drawn up plans just before Jiang Zemin's death to get rid of those who are very close to Jiang Zemin. And they numbered about 5,000 officials and 3,000 entrepreneurs whom he had identified. The purge hasn't started, but they are already being slowly pushed out, or targeting is beginning. But they are gathering around Tsang Ching-hung, Jiang Zemin's right-hand man, who is sitting there, and he is now emerging as a potent force. So we'll have to watch his future, but that's a faction that exists and that is growing in strength. And finally, I will end with something all of you are aware of. That is the disappearance of the foreign minister Ningguang. Now, there are various theories going around. He was corrupt, he had a mistress, he was involved with the Phoenix TV anchor. Let me reassure all of you here, particularly the gentlemen, the Chinese Communist Party doesn't bother if you have extramarital affairs. They're not bothered about how many mistresses you have. That's why it's only when you're in trouble they talk about you're having 50 or 100, etc. They're not bothered. You had the recent case of the Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai being involved with the vice premier Chang Koli. And what happened? They suppressed the whole thing. She retracted her charges. The end of the matter. So Jinping didn't go because of his involvement. There was something else. But here we need to look a bit at Jinping himself. Jinping had spent most of his years in the intelligence departments. He was an intelligence man, not a diplomat. He was picked up by Xi Jinping and brought into the Ministry of External Affairs. In fact, here let me go back. Why you need to do a deep dive into China, which I was talking to Commodore Wasu and Sajjan Nair. Jinping's background, he didn't come out from the university where Chinese diplomats normally go, which is the Foreign Service Academy. He came out of the University of International Relations, which is where the spies go, the guys who walk on the other side of the street. They go. And after that, he was sent to the Diplomatic Service Bureau. He joined a very honored profession, which is the journalists, where a number of spies go. They begin there. And he spent many years there before Xi Jinping picked him up and brought him into the foreign ministry. He served there. Now, obviously, you can think of it from the Indian context. A man coming from another background into a established service, there is going to be resentment. People are going to say, what about me? What about my future? You got this guy in. They had reason. Because at the 20th Party Congress, Jinping was brought into the Central Committee, which is a very important national level appointment. There are about 250 people, national figures, who are Central Committee members. He was made one. And he had never been in the Central Committee earlier, not even as an alternate member. He was brought in by Xi Jinping. The People's Daily and the organization department had said, precisely 2 days after the party congress ended, that a special group had been set up in the organizational department of the party to vet each candidate who was being brought into the Central Committee. And they said that Xi Jinping personally confirmed each candidate. They didn't say it in the context of Jinping, but obviously it appears. And so the meaning is that he was Jinping's man when he was brought into the Central Committee. Then Xi Jinping appointed him foreign minister, or before that sent him to Washington, bypassing a number of others who were senior to him. It is a very prestigious post for the Chinese. Then he was brought back, before he finished his term, and appointed foreign minister and made state councillor, which is higher than a minister, below a vice premier. Now, a man with this background, this, shall I say, star-filled trajectory, obviously has a very powerful mentor, and here it was Xi Jinping. Then for him to suddenly disappear, 25th of June he disappeared, 26th of July, the National People's Congress Standing Committee divests him of his post of minister. 1 month. I don't believe that 1 month was investigation. It was very hard bargaining behind the scenes going on for getting rid of him. Which to my mind means there's some group which now says to Xi Jinping, enough, There was resentment against him even earlier. We can go into that later. But he's out. That's another group which is still functioning. So I'll end here by repeating what I said earlier. Xi Jinping is not as solidly entrenched as we think he is. There is turbulence below the scene, and let's see what happens in the course of time. I think by the end of the year or maybe next. Thank you.
Thank you, Wasson sir, for giving me this opportunity. Let me start by telling you that the Chinese PLA soldier is not 10 feet tall. Okay, we look at it from 62. Please remember, 62 was not the failure of the soldier on ground. It was the failure of the higher direction at the highest level. When statement was made that I don't need the army, police is enough. There I rest my case. And we all know what tough battles were fought. I commanded my division in the only place where we counterattacked the Chinese in the Battle of Walloon. They lost 400 soldiers and we created a memorial for those soldiers during my tenure there. Any VIP coming is taken there to show that this is the memorial for the Chinese soldier who have died there in the Namti plains ahead of Wolong. We should never forget 67 where they got a thrashing at Nathula. And the biggest blunder that Tang Xiaoping made was in 85, 86, 87 in the Somdurangchu incident, and he blinked. He never realized the kind of reaction we will do. So please be rest assured next time. And what happened in Galwan? 40-45, I was following the Chinese Weibo. There is a new cemetery behind Galwan, 143 graves. Thank you very much. I rest my case. What the Chinese PLA is all about. The last big battle they fought was in 79. Whatever they may say, they ran back with the tail between their legs because the Vietnamese had just defeated the Americans and they taught them a lesson that they could never forget. Strategic level, yes, that's a different issue. We can talk later. Now, what exactly should we know about the PLA? Never put your own template on the PLA. Mao said, you fight your way, I'll fight my way. So that is the dictum they follow. What is the way? Sun Tzu. The acme of generalship is to win without fighting. Those who want to learn the details about it, you can read it in my book, The Dragon's Bite, which has just been released last month by C3S. They burn you from inside before they come to fight because they also don't trust their PLA to win. And the other thing is, if you can't win without fighting, then ensure victory before you join battle. Okay. So that is the way they are going to fight. And based on this, they have created their own strategies. That strategy is based on what they have perceived is the comprehensive national power of China, from which tasking is given and they go in for their capability modernization, and gradual reorganization and restructuring was the order of the day so that no attention is drawn to them. Now, whatever strategy they have been taking is always evolving. As their CNP has grown, the strategy has evolved. It was a gradual path to achieve their dream. It is not that Xi Jinping came and suddenly there was a China dream. No. The China dream, the vision for China was enunciated way back in late 1919s and 1921-22 by Dr. Sun Yat-sen. It is not Deng Xiaoping's dream or Xi Jinping's dream. Please read International Development of China and the vision for China that Dr. Sun Yat-sen had given. Nationalism, socialism and controlled economy. The three visions of how they could grow, learn from the West and grow stronger than them. How to rejuvenate. Deng Xiaoping only laid out the strategy. So let us look at the PLA, because we all talk of Xi Jinping, Xi Jinping, Xi Jinping. No. His predecessors set the base for him, and then we'll analyze, was he right or was he wrong in what he did? Now you look at Mao era. He won the civil war based on the lessons that he learnt in Long March when he tried to fight in the urban areas. And he received a thrashing from Chiang Kai-shek. And they then had a long march, 34-35, when from south they went to the northwest, Shanxi province. It's not for nothing that they went there, because that brought them closer to the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union could assist them. And that is where came out Mao's Red Book, his guerrilla warfare concept, and that three stages of defense, offense, and defense, stalemate, and offense. Okay. Aim was to trade space for time. As they won the civil war, The concept against Soviet Union, because by the time they won the Civil War and before they could gather their wits, his mentor, Stalin, died. And he was very anti-Khrushchev. He hated Khrushchev. He felt he was better than Khrushchev. And so they were very worried about the Soviet Union attacking them. And at that point in time was trade space for time with Soviet Union. And he had mass quantity because he didn't have quality. So that's why he had 35 group armies, and bulk of them were deployed towards the north to guard against them, few against Taiwan, rest a little bit against India. That is what is the deployment he had. He brought in the concept of active defense. Active defense doesn't mean that you're on the defensive. It means if you feel your interests are threatened, you can launch a preemptive strike. That is acceptable. And people's war. He wanted all the people to be involved in the war, because quite a lot of people in China had been ideologically subverted by Mao. That is the essence, subversion of the masses to be with them. Then we come to Deng Xiaoping's era. By then, what had happened? They had opened up to the US. The Soviet Union was getting embroiled in Afghanistan. So by the early 80s, he realized that there is no threat from him from any superpower. So it became a concept of local regional wars. And for that, he brought in the Warzone Campaign doctrine. And please remember, it is one front at a time. Not multiple fronts, one front at a time. And it states in his document, I was very lucky when I was in Tajikistan to lay my hands on their official document, get it translated and gave it to MI and other places. I hope people are reading that. That it is not against superpower, it's against regional power, one power at a time. And that's what you see replicated in his foreign policy also. When he deals with countries, it is bilateral. Never a group of countries together. It's always bilateral. The Warzone Campaign also has 3 phases. Of course, EFSA, which they call elite forces, sharp arms, gaining initiative by striking first, and of quick battle, quick results. That means he's looking at short war. Early termination of war, and based on that, they had issued a big pamphlet. It is available on the net as a PDF, the English volume, supranational, I think, strategy or something, which is essentially, when you read through that voluminous document, it is how to, the escalatory control matrix for this war zone campaign. So remember, it fails when more than one country join together, or that he has multiple fronts. And to further subversion and to further the art of winning without fighting, they brought in what is known as the comprehensive national power. A comprehensive, the Western construct of the national power looks at only 3 elements: economy, military, and diplomacy. They brought in a human vertical. So different scholars and different people will give you different set of matrices for that. But essentially the vertical is human. And their entire focus is to target and subvert the human. Because whether it be economy, military, or diplomacy, it is the human resource which is important, which gives the power to you. So that is what, and then we move from there to Jiang era, and the most important part is the unrestricted warfare. That is what was brought out during his time. But prior to that, he was, the local wars under high-tech conditions came up. He was telling local wars under modern conditions. Why high-tech? They were most amazed and shocked and feared the shock and awe during Desert Storm of Gulf War I. That told them that if they are not technologically competent, they are going to lose. And the next was the Taiwan crisis. Of course, it was their own crisis, 95-96, when they fired the missiles. The Americans brought in 2 carrier groups into the Taiwan Strait, and the Chinese could do nothing. From there evolved what is called the anti-access and the area denial concept to keep the superpower at bay. And the focus went to the rocket force, then the second artillery. Unrestricted warfare looks at military, trans-military and non-military domains to subvert people. It's essentially fighting beyond rules. The translation unrestricted warfare is not complete. It is warfare beyond rules. That means there are no rules. From people's war, it moved to people at war. Period. Chiang had given a 3-step modernization of the PLA, which Hu Jintao also worked on, and Xi Jinping also keeps giving. They all give their 3 steps. But the most important step that he had done was they had a conference at the end of the 20th century, 98-99. They had started work from 92-93 and beyond 96. It was their vision of future warfare, and they came out with 6 combats of robo, space, cyber, everything they brought out in that, and the R&D has been focused since then. Okay, and the improvement in their missiles and the warheads began at that time for the anti-access area denial. Next, you come to the Hu Jintao era. That is the period where the maximum, you could say, technological development in military technology took place. He may have been looked upon by Xi Jinping as being weak, but this was the most important. Digitization, computers were coming in, so he changed it to local wars under informatized conditions. And he, you could say, focused more in unrestricted warfare on the 3 warfare strategy. That is your psychological, information, and your legal warfare or lawfare that they call about. Please remember, what is legal warfare? He comes and he learns everything about your judiciary, all your laws, finds the loopholes and functions in your country through those loopholes. So whatever he is doing as per your law, it's legal, you can't hit back at him. The problem that the US and their states are facing in banning TikTok. As per their laws, it's a federal government, central, even the state, it's legal. So you can't ban it. If they ban it, he'll go to court. So that is lawfare. Okay. We talk a lot about him making combined arms brigades. Please remember the process of brigadization, all exercises to understand the structure of it started under Hu Jintao, 2006. The entire PLA, except for the 3 brigades in Tibet Military District and the 4 divisions in Xinjiang, everything is in the Han heartland, Sichuan and eastwards. So if they have to come towards India, then you require long-range movement, which they had then termed as trans-regional support operations. Now it's trans-theater support operations. Exercises for that began initially in a small way in 99, but from 2009 they went into inter-regions. The first exercise, the Stride, Kwa Yue, began in 2009. So let us give the due to whatever development had taken place to where it is due. Xi Jinping is only getting aggressive based on the foundation that his predecessors had given. When the people started getting worried, that was when initially Hu Jintao coined the phrase peaceful rise, and then he told harmonious society. Through Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, they did not have money, but they wanted to do modernization. So they reduced initially it was 13 under Mao, came back to 11 under Deng Xiaoping, came to 7 under Jiang Zemin, 7 regions. From 35 group armies came down to 24 and then came down to 18. But even for 18, they did not have the money. So they brought in terms for the group armies, type A, type B, type C. A were the priority 1 to receive equipment, whatever they shed went to C, next was B. Within these group armies, they created what is known as rapid reaction units, who had been given all the modern equipment, and rapid reaction formations, that is brigades, divisions, who had been given this. They were the ones first tasked to go and assist the neighboring region if there was going to be a fight. Why am I telling this? Today you may think that he is weak, but please remember, by the time Xi Jinping took over, all the armies were competent enough. They had the modern equipment. So they did have. But always remember, it is the man behind the weapon which counts, not the weapon itself. Okay. Next, now we just look at a brief glimpse of the 3 terms of Xi Jinping. I showed you the PLA on the rise, and it is by design I show you PLA on the down. He started off with purges. A lot has been spoken about, but please remember, when you purge a general, he doesn't come alone. There is his personal staff and the staff who are there in key positions under him, functioning under him. They all get targeted. We only get to know about the general. Okay? What was being done quietly, he pushed and said major reorganization. That creates a major flux. You have removed all the regions, you have created theatre commands. You have not even exercised and tried to find out how should the command and control flow, who is answerable to whom. Earlier the group armies were directly under the military region and the CMC. You brought in a group, the ground forces. You suddenly brought in a ground force headquarter. The 2nd Artillery, you created a force. You took out elements from the General Staff Department and other departments, the Armament Department, and you created the Strategic Support Force. Now, what is the command and control structure and who goes there? The CMC, the 4 departments, suddenly you remove that and you created 15, 6 departments, 6 offices and 3 commissions. Functioning is not so easy when you go for such a big flux. And then the purges, as Dr. Ranade had mentioned, has continued. Last count, it crossed 150. And look at what happens to their staff officers, and then look at the morale of the people. The rank and file and the officers, they are more concerned looking back, oh, he is my mentor. If he falls foul of Xi Jinping for something, what happens to me? Is he mentally attuned to fight? Or is he more worried of what is going to happen at the back? The last hit in the rocket force were 4 senior commanders and oblique deputy commanders and the political commissar. 4 of them. And whom has he brought? A person from the Navy who has no clue about rockets. And a political commissar who is senior to him from the Air Force to see that he does what he is telling. And the rocket force is the first priority force of his in his A to AD. Is it good for the morale of the force? I leave it to you. So, what will he do against India? He has learnt his lessons in the Galwan and other incidents. You had Rakhi Nala, Depsang, you had Chumar, you had Doklam, and you had Galwan. And this is since he has taken over. So the unrestricted warfare, the 3 warfares will continue against you. Despite learning these lessons, didn't he attempt at Yangtze again in December last year? So please remember these salami slicings, he will keep continuing against you. He will not stop. And the most important part is he needs, at least now with all these purges, let us say he stabilizes now, like Dr. Ranade had been mentioning, certain internal pushback is coming, he starts stabilizing. He will still need about 10 odd years in my reckoning, 10 to 15 years for the PLA to stabilize. It's not going to stabilize in a hurry. There have been quite a lot of changes and quite a lot of worries about what is going to happen. Yeah. So this is the window that you get for whatever you want to do to strengthen yourself. After that, you will not get the time, because by then, like what I said, type A, type B, type C, by then he would have achieved a certain degree of strength within his PLA. I'm not saying whether he will succeed or not, but attack at some time he is surely going to do. Because his biggest worry as far as the eastern seaboard is, if he does something there, the first to fall will be his artificial islands in the South China Sea. There is nothing much he will be able to do to defend it, because the other countries will also gang up with the Americans. That will fall. Against India, he is still quite confident that the others will not place boots on ground, but he knows it will go the Ukraine way, where they will give you the ways and means to fight. And like what Dr. Ranade had mentioned, he is a cornered rat. He is cornered, and I call him a cornered rat. It will hit out anywhere. So the priorities are either India or the three islands in Taiwan which are closer to the mainland, Kinmen, Matsu, because he has to create his notion of victory, because there is going to be a loss of face if he achieves something big and he loses. So he has to recreate a notion of victory and says, look, this is what I went for, I've achieved it, so I have won. And so we can set the stage for the next stage. So in the next session tomorrow, I will elaborate more on the kind of threats that India will face and what we need to do to overcome that. Thank you.
May I request Shankar sir, please?
Right, as they are changing the slides and getting my slides on, I'd like to thank Commodore Wasson for calling me once again here, and a very good morning to all of you. You want to put that slide? Put it, yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot. What General Narayanan had said about 67 and 87, how we did what we did, and we did it very well. We've analyzed it. I've analyzed it with Sanjay Kulkarni, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, who was there in 87 in Sundrang Chu. It's there on gunner shot, right? And on 25th, we're going to analyze all our battles and skirmishes post 62 with China. That is 67, 87, Doklam, Galwan, Kailash, and Yangtze, where we actually pushed them back and pushed them back pretty hard. And we're going to analyze as to what we did right, so that we can apply it for the future, which is something which we have not done. Actually, as a nation, we have not gone into what are our strengths to put it, and this I'm going to do in public face. The second thing is, I'm going to talk of something about the PLA, PLA's unconventional warfare in the Indo-Pacific. Please remember, when I talk of this, the PLA is something which is already moving in one direction. The economy is moving in another direction. It's going to generate its own internal friction. Plus, all these concepts of war zone concept, high-tech war under more, informatized and intelligentized conditions, etc., 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 are all untested theories, right? We don't know whether they'll work or not. Okay, I mean, you look at it, even to make a child, it takes 9 months. And these are major, major operations. Carrier-based operations are huge. It takes about a quarter of a century to stabilize carrier-based operations. And this man has manufactured 3 carriers without any aircraft. Right? So there are major question marks on it. But then, like I said, the internal dynamics, as Mr. Rana had brought out, the momentum which is carrying forward PLA, all these put together give rise to friction. And friction always generates heat. So we'll talk about this thing, right? Yeah. Where? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk a minute about this. I did this show with Madhumita, Sapna, Anantra, and Shruti on the demographic decline of China. These girls made a wonderful presentation. What's more important is, one guy yesterday when I put this video out gave me 500 rupees. I said, I'll give the girls a treat. Immediately he gave 4,000 rupees. He said, sir, please take them out for dinner. Right? So I'm going to take you out for dinner, and that 4,000, we have a kitty of 4,500. The important thing about this is two things. One, our young people have started learning about China, which we didn't learn. Very honestly, many of us didn't even learn about China. It's so great to see Namrata. Namrata and I've had an association before, and through her, I'm sure we'll extend it with Mr. Ranade also. And these 4 girls have done a perfect job. And I've also taken a few students of the OP Jindal University with Sriparna Patak and had this thing, and I got tremendous response from the public. And the public today is prepared to pay for this cause. Important thing here is not paying for these people. The public is interested to fund people to do well against China. That's the message I'm trying to bring across. Okay, now here, I'm going to just put a quote out which says, as far as the Indo-Pacific strategy is concerned, the familiar Anglo-American model of power projection from a far-flung constellation of military bases is not the only nor even the likely pathway for China to achieve its objectives of building a world-class military and breaking a maritime power. We all think he's going to have bases. He doesn't have them. Is he building them? He will try. But if he doesn't have it, how does he do? This is what the whole story is all about. When you talk of the Indo-Pacific, you have to look at 3 features: the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Himalayan Hindu Kush Mountains, because they have a great bearing on the Indian Ocean, right? Now, when you look at the Indian Ocean, you must understand it's vast and deep. It has got restricted entry points. You can't enter the Indian Ocean from the north. The Indian landmass dominates this whole place, right? Okay. It is divided by the Indian Peninsula. It is also divided by the Chagos Archipelago, that is the Digo-Garcia, Lacative line. It splits the whole thing. It's a very difficult ocean to control. And China does not have a foothold in the IOR and desperately seeks one. When you look at the Western Pacific, it's a different ball game altogether. So there's no Indo-Pacific strategy. It is 3 strategies put together. That's one thing which you have to understand. Shallow seas, deep Philippine Sea, that actually splits, between the first island and the second island chain and beyond. The Western Pacific littorals have their own dynamics, which they have actually encircled China in some form, right? And then, of course, the first island chain, it's a sea of restricted and contested spaces. The passes between these islands are passages where China cannot move easily or come in easily. Then, of course, you have the 9-dash line and the dynamics of the 9-dash line. Must remember, in the Western Pacific, China is hemmed in, and it is almost in this, it's in a state of self-containment and encirclement. And this is the area where Chinese wealth lies, population lies, their critical areas lies. They can't get out of this. Just think of China, right? No submarine, even if submarine comes to Hambantota or Wang, Huanghe or whatever that ship came to Hambantota, we raise the hue and cry. Nothing goes near USA. Whereas 3 carrier groups are just within strike distance of China. He's a man who's isolated and contained psychologically. Okay, what are China's ambitions? It's not very great. You go through it very quickly. Superpower, great maritime power, unquestioned power in Indo-Pacific, push in USA out of the region. That's what Mr. Ranade was also talking of. Reunification, subdue India into acceptance of Chinese supremacy. This is their second goal after USA, right? And this has been consistent from the days of Mao. They don't accept India as any kind of a power at all. Okay. Then, of course, it wants to exercise power over its immediate neighbors, and it has to put its 2-ocean strategy in place. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere, right? Now, what are the tools it has? It has its economic superpower heft, overbearing presence in the Western Pacific. It has artificial islands which it has created in the South China Sea based on the 9-dash line, the mercantilism which comes with the BRI, debt traps, trading, increasing footprint of its military diplomacy, which is often under the water, under the carpet kind of a activity. Its technology, which is deploying in a major way, AI, cyber, space, quantum. It's got catch power allies in North Korea and Pakistan. It's got an extensive port network operated by Chinese firms. This is critical, and I'll talk about it in a little while. It's got an increasingly sophisticated missile force, a layered maritime force which has Navy, Coast Guard, militia, and civilian vessels, a very clear civilian CMF, civil military fusion, and an increasing diplomatic footprint. What are the realities? It's got some problems. What are the problems? It is energy and resource deficient, and this can't go. It's only worsening. It has to depend on imports of food security, which is at a great premium today. Right? It is unpopular all over. Like what was said earlier, it has got only 2 allies, North Korea and Pakistan. The rest are not allies. They're not even fair weather friends. It's got a limited blue water reach. Its limited blue water reach is constrained by the littorals around itself and the shallow South China Sea and its navy, which doesn't have that capability to reach out. It's got lack of logistic bases, and it feels that bases are vulnerable. That's how it keeps threatening USA that we'll fire on Guam and we'll do all that. It's got a long disputed land boundary with India which won't run away. It's got maritime disputes with every neighbor, less Laos and Cambodia. If Laos and Cambodia didn't have to be paid out so much the way it's being paid out, they might have problems with them also. And they are developing more problems with the canals and rail connectivity which they are putting out there. Okay, in a way, there is a geostrategic encirclement by the security architecture of USA and its allies. It's in place, and these chaps want to break out. Taiwan is their central problem. Its periphery is a first-order national security concern, which I had said earlier. Okay, what are the strategic tasks of the PLA? This is what I picked up from their white papers, various white papers. Sovereignty and security of China's territorial land, air, and sea assets. Defend unification of the motherland, which is implicitly of Taiwan. China's security and interest in new domains, that is overseas. Right? And maintain strategic deterrence, participate in regional and international security cooperation, maintain regional and world peace, strengthen efforts and operations against infiltration, separatism and terrorism, emergency rescue and relief, rights and protection duties and guards. These are all part of the white paper. Now, we all know about China's grey zone tactics. What does it encompass is something which we generally don't understand. Or rather, we don't see the full part of it. It is this: coercion through geopolitical, economic, military, and cyber information operations beyond regular diplomatic and economic activities, but below the use of kinetic use of military force. It's pressurizing targets by international or indirect external pressure through leveraging regional fora or creating fora to do this. It can be both ways. Bilateral pressure by activities in target countries. And these two things are what Mr. Ranade also spoke about. He is trying to create an architecture where he's the boss, he's the preeminent sole arbitrator of the whole story, and leveraging local proxies, which is created a plenty. And these local proxies come in various shades, including political, right? Including our Kerala Chief Minister, who one of the few people who, wishes Shi Jinping happy birthday. Okay. Yeah, it's so. It's a fact. This is, it's there in his Twitter, right? I'm not saying anything. Yeah, we have a problem. We must understand, right? Okay. Military encroachments in air, maritime, and land domains, military exercises, these are all what he does, and missile drills, which we saw when Nancy Pelosi went away, not when she was there, right? Engaging surrogates such as contractors in a conflict or instigating color revolutions. And by doing all this, he's actually, hired that, what's that, so I'm forgetting its name. BlackRock guy as his contractor for his interests in Africa. Okay. Of course, he's using as Pakistan and North Korea and BRI also incorporated in this Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, these are the kinds of grey zone activities by numbers, okay, against various countries. Now, he's made it maximum. Of course, you see how it is. I'm just giving you an idea. that he does it more. I mean, there are more countries and more things which I can put out, but these are the 4-5 things which I got where it gives you an idea as to what he does, and it could be military, cyber, economic, and geopolitical. And the least he tries is with Japan and India, but he does try, because he feels if India and Japan get too big, and they already teamed up with USA and Australia, then they're too big. Like what Rajiv said, he'll fight with one person at a time. He can't fight with 4 people at a time. Already he's in a military outmatch. He's outmatched militarily by this quadrant. So whether he'll take up military, whether he'll do that, we don't know. But then the whole thing is in a flux. That we should see, we should understand very clearly. What is his power projection modality? This is the crux, these 4 points. He'll continue to keep his effort up to establish and expand formal military bases, which he'll do. He'll utilize PRC-operated foreign infrastructure to safeguard China's overseas interests and carry out far seas projection. His far sea projection is by these port contractors who are all around. He'll have missile cover to own forces and threat to adversary forces, bases / high-value targets. Basically, since he doesn't have a base, he's operating on a temporary base with his missile cover, right? And gray zone activities to underpin power projection. Okay, this is his missile reach. We know that completely, whether you like it or not, the entire Indo-Pacific has been covered. And all the kinds of missile, I'll not go into the ranges, but what it tells you is that he can dominate the Indo-Pacific with his missile range. The second thing is, these are the number of ports he has, which is operated by Chinese companies. There are 105 ports which have been operated by Chinese, including major ports in Europe, and that's why Europe is stuck. Why is Europe soft towards China? Apart from everything else, China can tomorrow, shut off complete Europe trade through these ports, right? And all these ports, most of them are SOEs operated by China. Now, if you come to the Indian Ocean, these are the ports he has. These ports, in any case, he controls, and these give him bases, quasi-bases, military bases, where his logistics are taken care of to a large extent. What he can't do is he doesn't have pure basing facilities in terms of armament and all that, but if he has logistic ships to offset that, then he doesn't need a base. If he has armament, rearmament capability mid-sea, then he's got or in open seas, he's got a different ball game. Yeah, we'll do it. Now he's got an overseas strategic, strong point concept, where he has a network of 100 ports which he uses, which have dual use capability, and these are the strategic strong points to sustain overseas operations. They are not suited to support high-end combat, but they are optimized for peacetime logistics and int collection. He's enacted laws for military use of commercial port facilities, and these people are obligated to do for him. And Chinese people are already commercially active in that host country, and they ensure that that host country behaves the way they want to be behaved. So, and of course, he deals with local governments to rent space and procure necessary supplies, like he's done in Colombo. Colombo port, I mean, everyone looks at Hambantota, but he comes and docks at Colombo. His warships come to Colombo even today. Everyone looks at Gwadar, but he's got a full-fledged base in Karachi. He can go to Karachi and sit whatever he wants and operate any kind of vessel he wants, including an aircraft carrier there. We don't look at it. We are looking at it in the wrong direction at many times. Okay. Then, of course, he's got military diplomacy, including foreign assistance, military sales, and military training. Arms sales lead to PLA access to ports and facilities. Remember that. If he has given an old submarine to Bangladesh, it comes with a package. The package is PLA people are there to maintain that submarine, and that submarine is in the ship, in the port, and he's got all access to the port facilities of Bangladesh. So tomorrow, if he can arm twist Bangladesh to operate from there. So this is a different way of doing things because he doesn't have a base. Of course, Pakistan, Burma, and Bangladesh are top 3 recipients of Chinese arms, etc., etc. He exports submarine surface combatants and UAVs to enable Chinese technical assistance and personnel to be present in host nations. So, okay, now Western Pacific strategy is very simple in point form: coastline defense, artificial islands as pivots of control, missile drills and military exercises, air and naval encroachments and maneuvers, use of maritime militia to crowd out targets, water cannon drills, which is trying today with the Philippines, 9-dash line as a territorial claim line to China. He's got his claims on Senkakus, North Korea as a cat's paw. He's doing naval exercises with Russia, and he's developing a base in Cambodia. All these contribute to his Western Pacific strategy. Okay. He's got a Himalayan strategy. It's very clear. As far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, we should be clear. The idea is to tie down India conclusively along the LAC, enhance close relations with Pakistan to enable major basing in the Arabian Sea, enhance indirect threat to India through Nepal, Bhutan and Myanmar. We see this happening, right? And I've discussed this in a couple of my episodes in Gunnershot with people who know Nepal, who know Bhutan well. And General Shokin Chauhan and I've had a long talk about this and also about Myanmar. Okay. Of course, he wants to pursue the two-ocean strategy. He needs one major base, one way or the other, in the Indian Ocean. Otherwise, he's out of equation. And these days, the interesting thing is, he's enhancing his ties with Iran and the Middle East. The new diplomacy is getting leverage to enhance, further his Indo-Pacific strategy. The Indian Ocean strategy is very clear. China does not have a foothold, and it desperately seeks one. He's building his port using his port infrastructure. He's got one base in Djibouti, which he started as a basing facility, but is going beyond that. Karachi is a ready-made base. I've spoken of all the other places, but planned ships are visiting all these bases, right? Their planned ships are on station in Western IOR, and IOR forum he is held without India. We have to understand that he held it about 6 months back, where he left India and Australia out of the equation. And then you have the influence of BRI and CPC. He is carrying out consistent operations and persistent operations in the Gulf of Eden. We must remember that he's kept something or the other there. He's conducting non-combat activities. What is this? Protecting Chinese citizens and investment, bolstering China's soft power influence, undertaking counterterrorism, collect intelligence. Yeah, we'll just finish. Yeah. Coercive diplomacy, and he's enabling enabling operations in a conflict environment, right? Without going into too many details. The last slide, please remember, his entire story, I come back to the slide which I said so. The familiar Anglo-American model of power projection from a far-flung constellation of military bases is not even the likely pathway for China to achieve its objectives of building a world-class military and becoming a great maritime power. He's doing something different. How do you counter it is a challenge, right? I'll take that on when we have question answers. Thank you, and sorry for overshooting.
Thank you, sir. Can I request the speakers to please come to the front? We'll have a question and answer session now. I give preference to the audience before we take on anything from the... Yeah.
So I would like to thank the chair and the speakers for those instructive and enriching presentations. Moving on, I now invite the chair to open the floor for questions and moderate the Q&A session. I also request the audience to please note that the first 15 minutes will be allotted to questions from the audience present here in person, and the remaining 15 minutes for the audience attending virtually. Thank you.
Can we have the questions, please?
Good morning. My question is to General Rajiv Narayan. Since he's done extensive research on the PLA and all that, does he have something specific to say about our Sumdarongchu engagement? Because from my understanding of things, according to late General B.S. Malik, who was the 39 Brigade commander during Sumdarongchu standoff, he claims that some young Indian company commander had fired an LMG burst over PLA troops' heads, which was very, very hotly contested and rejected by the then Indian ambassador to China at a seminar like this. So, from my understanding, that Sumdrongchu, the way the Indian army handled the standoff with the Chinese, is what led to Rajiv Gandhi going to China in December 1988. Thank you.
That's what I said, the Chinese blinked. They didn't expect the kind of response that would have happened. General Sundarji, it is told, I'm not too sure about it, can't confirm it, but it is told that he did not take any political clearance. And we had just got the biggest helicopters in the world at that time, and even now nobody has made it, the Mi-26. The Mi-26. And he lifted a whole brigade and surrounded them. And when they didn't pull back, the entire LAC was activated. And it was activated very fast. Where you didn't have roads or mule tracks, he moved them by helicopters. And that worried Tang Xiaoping a lot. And that is when he blinked, and first the foreign minister went, set the ground, and that's when he went and both decided to leave the issue of the borders for future generations, and you had your confidence building measures and peace and tranquility agreements and other things which followed, which were torn and put in the dustbin by Xi Jinping.
Yeah, can I just add to this? Just see that video which I did with General Sanjay Kulkarni, because Sanjay Kulkarni was a major those days. He was there. He was there. That's why I did that video there. See, the PLA people, they're still there, where they have not left that place where they put their foot, right? That is at a place which is, I call it a nether place, which is neither LAC nor theirs or not ours. It's something like, the thickness of that pen line which you draw. So you don't know whether the LAC was never demarcated. So you don't know whether they are on the LAC or not. So it's a claim and they've held on. But what happened then, like what General Narayanan said, is we mobilized. We first surrounded them so that they don't break out. And then we occupied the complete LAC heights in that area, where even mules couldn't go. Okay, and we went and did a heli-borne operation and outflanked the Chinese completely. And till now, that is why along that entire, in the Arunachal, we are at a position of advantage. Why did they come to Yangtze? Why they come to Yangtze? This is, whatever happens at Yangtze happens almost every second year, third year. It's a repeat action. They can't penetrate in Yangtze because we are at a dominant position, right? Whether they fired a burst of LMG or not is irrelevant, because that we don't know it. That gets lost in the noise of history. But what if you look at the actual things on ground, what happened? We are at a dominant position, and that has stood us in good stead over a period of time.
I'll just make 2 points. I was in Hong Kong at this time when this happened. And they had a Sinwha headquarters there, which was their unofficial embassy, if you can call it. And when this happened, they reached out to me and said, we want to talk to you, we want to talk to the High Commissioner. So I said, all right, I'll check it out. So they said, our chief wants to have dinner with him. So I checked with our High Commissioner. I got back, I said, I'll let you know and we'll try and fix it in the next few weeks. I mean, I was just, so they said, no, we want it urgently. And news travels a bit slowly, but by that time I got to know what was happening on the border. We finally had a meeting, and the first question that he raised was, why are you doing this on the border? Why have you mobilized so much, etc. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. And the second thing is, according to a document that I got later, that is by that time I had moved to Beijing, but a document that I managed to get, obviously a highly classified one, that laid out the discussions and the plans for the Qinghai-Tibet Railway, the first one. And the reason given for that railway was this mobilization. And apparently Tang Xiaoping asked the then Tibet military region, how long will it take for you to counter-mobilize? And his response was many months. You know, he'd given some 10 months or 12 months. And Deng Xiaoping said, that's too much. And then they started work on this Chigai table. Just thought a bit of trivia.
Next question, please. Sir.
My name is Surya Narayan. I'm a Warzone academic. One point which is not highlighted by the three speakers. The main feature of Deng Xiaoping, foreign military policy. And that policy was to build up a united front against Vietnam during the Third Indochina War. It is necessary to highlight the fact that Chinese invaded Vietnam after Deng Xiaoping visited the United States and had detailed discussions with Brzezinski. If you go through Lee Kuan Yew's two-volume memoirs, he writes about how China was bitter about Vietnam. What he doesn't write is that how this bitterness was fanned by Lee Kuan Yew himself. And while the Chinese advice to the ASEAN member states of ASEAN was that you prevent the United States from coming, you keep off USSR, that means USSR-Vietnam alliance, then only you will have your peace and stability in Southeast Asia. What the Chinese did not mention, which some of the ASEAN countries realize, especially Malaysia and Indonesia, the fact, while keeping the tiger away and keeping the wolf away from us, they are allowing the dragon to step into Southeast Asia. This was the basic policy of India towards Southeast Asia during this period. It was beautifully summarized by K.R. Narayanan, who was at that time Vice President, in a seminar which I had the good fortune to participate in New Delhi.
When you look at, I see Pakistan as a replica of China. There is a saying in Hindi, "Apna kaam nikalta, bhaad mein jaye janta," which means if I can make money, so be it. If the people go hungry, I am not interested. That's the classic case where you find Pakistan today. The elites are eating up the money. That's the classic case in communist China. They are not bothered about the people. Even today they are struggling now with their economy because till now their economy was never people driven. It was state driven. And when you have state driven, they do all the corruption. And if you read their own writings and the writings which come out of Singapore also, the cesspool of corruption is the state-owned enterprises of China. That is the basis on which Xi has come up by supporting them. Has he ever touched even one SOE, which is supposed to be the cesspool of all corruption in their own writings? He has not touched any one of them. He's gone after the private players. And I would stick my neck out and say, under the garb of anti-corruption drive, which the Communist Party had requested him to do, he has purged essentially all his opponents. He hasn't touched the people under him. But I agree with Dr. Ranade that he's at his weakest, because now reports are coming out of factions within his Zhejiang army, as it is called. You have people from the Zhejiang clique, there's the Fujian clique, there is the Shanxi clique. Of course, the Jiangzemin clique, which is the Shanghai clique, is coming up. There is one military-industrial complex clique led by his own defense minister, Li Shangfu, which has come up. There is another faction which has come up who have filial ties with him, family ties with him, which goes back decades. And there are three who have been smart, who have not thrown their hat anywhere in any of the factions. One is Wang Huning. If you know about Wang Huning, he has survived Chiang Zemin, he has survived Hu Jintao, and he has survived Xi Jinping. And all these, what they write, 3 constructs, 4 this thing, 5 that thing, this all comes from the brain of Wang Huning. The second one is Wang Yi, who is promoted and demoted both together. As the vice premier in the state council running the foreign affairs, he is the top man, but then he is also the executor as the foreign minister. But best part is in the MFA's website, his name has not yet been put. The minister of foreign affairs is still vacant. I don't know if today morning they have put it. As of yesterday, it was not there. And the third, I'm forgetting one more person, Lee something. These are the only three who have kept their class code together, which means there is a power struggle in the offing within Xi Jinping's clique.
Yeah, if you look at the new appointees or the new people coming up, you can make out that Chow Kercher, who is now the NPC chief, he is promoting his guys. Li Qiang, the premier, is promoting his guys. He and He Lifeng together. So they're sort of putting up their own people. That's a potent scenario for a future firefight. I don't think it started right now, but it's developing.
If somebody is strong, then the people below are quiet. They may be factions, but they are quiet. But if these factions start coming up in the open, that means they feel the person on top is not strong.
When scientifically speaking, entropy starts happening when the steam goes out of a system.
It is a bank general.
And whenever there's entropy in a system, it happens when the steam of a system goes out or is weakening. Today, you'll see this entropy happening in China because the top is getting shaky. We'll leave it at that.
Can you move to the next question, please?
For Mr. Ranade or for Rajiv, 3-4 weeks ago, General Zhao Zongxi reappeared in Tibet. And he had been the father of Doklam and the father of the confrontation in Ladakh. And he visited Tibet. He met the party boss in Tibet, Wang Junchen, and he was in full uniform 3 years after retirement with his stars. So how do you explain this? And he was a member of a delegation of the CPPCC, while before he used to be one of the vice chairmen of NPC.
I think the significance of his being in uniform. Firstly, even retired generals in China at times do put on a uniform when they're appearing somewhere or the other for some special function. But I think in this case, his appearing in uniform was to convey the message that the army has still got a very important role to play. Translated, it means that the tensions with India continue to exist. And here I go back to the start, which is the first day of the 20th Party Congress, when they showed the film of the Galwan clashes. That was to the past members of the Central Committee, the incoming members of the Central Committee, all the top officials, everyone on the opening day saw that. That was the message from Xi Jinping to everyone about the state of relations with India. And his going to Tibet in uniform, to my mind, underscores that message. Since then, of course, other things have happened, Xi Jinping going to Chandu, etc., etc. But this is my reading of that.
So if there are no more questions, we can move on to the virtual participants.
Greetings, everybody. I'll be the virtual moderator for today. Online, we have one question from Mr. Atreya. His question is directed towards Lieutenant General P.R. Shankar, sir. He asks, what is the role of Russia in China's maritime and land strategy? Over to you, sir.
See, thanks for the question. It's a pretty interesting one, and it goes with what Mr. Ranade initially said. There's a whole story of what the Russia-Ukraine war and that no limits friendship, everything has a deep impact on the relationship between Russia and China, whether it's in the maritime region or in land. Now, when it comes to the maritime region, remember Vladivostok is just next there. And if you look at it very critically, Vladivostok, Japan, South Korea, China, North Korea, And if you include USA also into it, it's a nuclear hexagon there. We are all in the same place. And you also hear about a lot of activities, air and maritime activities, exercises of China and Russia. And China draws most of its military thinking and activity and training from Russia. So Russia is a very key partner in the development of the Chinese military. One. Second, diplomatically you have to understand that Russia still maintains good ties with Iran, and it has got a huge hold on Africa or the sub-Saharan Africa and all that. Even now in Niger, who's got the biggest hand? The biggest hand is with Russia. No one else has. Others are all peripheral actors in the coup in this thing. So there is a great synergy on land between Russia and China on this issue also. If all these ports also, which have put out 105 ports which are all around, especially those in Africa and all, have to succeed, they need Russian help. So, and if there's an alternate world order which has to be created, it can't be done without Russia. And if you see the fundamentals of this, the underpinnings of this alternate world order, which we are being Sino-centric world order, so to say, which we always keep talking of, it comes from 4-5 structures. The first structure is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The second structure is your BRICS, which is going to happen, where India is going to be the kebab mein haddi there, hopefully. And it will happen that way. And then the third is the relationship with ASEAN. Though a lot of people say that USA has got a better hold over Asian nations because of their military pacts, etc., etc. Don't forget that just for a matter of interest, more than 50% of weaponry in Myanmar is Russian, right? And so is the case with many other Asian nations. So Russia and China together have tremendous influence in this area. Russia might not have physical forces here, but the influence factor is something which we cannot forget. Like I said, military diplomacy is something which we cannot forget. It has an outrageous role in world affairs. And this is something which we also have to learn. Our military diplomacy and our military footprint is probably the least. And if we want to be a power in future, we have to learn from what these two nations have done and increase your military footprint, for which I think already certain steps are being taken. I will not say that our government is not doing enough. We've started, it's a slow process, it has to evolve over the next 1 or 2 decades. It's not going to happen overnight. And it won't happen till such time we have some money in the pockets and we are able to put chips on the table. So let's see how it progresses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Atreya, I hope your question has been answered. We conclude the Q&A session. Over to you, Yogesh.
So, I thank the Commodore for having moderated this session so efficiently. I thank the members in the audience and the speakers for that engaging Q&A session. Now, I request Commodore R.S. Wasson, Director General, Chennai Center for China Studies, to felicitate the chair for the session, Commodore V. Venugopal, with a sapling. Now, I request the chair, Commodore Venugopal, to felicitate the distinguished speakers with sapling. Thank you, sir. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the first session of the conference.
Add a round of applause for the speakers.